and put us online.
Will not be satisfied until every local church reaches its full God-given potential. Hybels is a best-selling author of more than 20 books, including a new video curriculum, Leading from Here to There, 5 Essential Skills. He is a pastor, author, speaker, sailor, and a grandfather. Let's welcome Bill Hybels.
Today I want to talk to you about the lenses of leadership. In particular, 4 distinct lenses that come to my mind when I try to look at the subject matter of leadership holistically. So check out these bright red lenses as we begin. Who in the world would ever wear flaming bright red lenses? A passionate leader might. A fired up, pulse racing leader who understands the importance of passion would shamelessly put these on every single day because she or he understands the effect that unbridled passion has on the lives of every single follower. For the last several years, every time I try to define leadership for you, I simply say in its simplest form, it's leading people from here to a place called there. It's building the case in front of your people like a lawyer would, that you cannot, must not, it's unconscionable, unthinkable, unacceptable to stay here. And what we must do is we must start the journey to a preferred future. It's just from here to there. I stress every year that leadership is not just presiding over something. It's not protecting a position. It's not pontificating to others how smart you think. I once did a multi-month study on the power of inspiration. I learned that a motivated worker will outperform an unmotivated worker by as much as 40%. Just think about that. That 40% performance differential blew my mind. So the obvious question is, what can a leader do to inspire team members to that 40% height, right? Now, the research on this was another mind blower to me. While generous compensation plans, healthy cultures, and meaningful work matters a whole lot, what matters most, believe it or not, to team members, what has the highest inspirational effect on them, is to work for and around a passion-filled leader. Those of you who have ever worked in or around under a passion-filled leader, you will never forget the thrill of it. The leader's passion is contagious. You feel it. You absorb it. So the next question is, how does a leader get passionate? Is there a little pill? Does it require a personality transplant? Do you have to stick your finger in a light socket and become someone you're not? Actually, passion is usually derived either from the mountaintops of a beautiful dream or the valley depths of an absolute frustration with something that's going terribly wrong in this world. Countless number of people throughout history have been filled to overflowing with passion after being inspired by a beautiful idea. The Wright brothers studied the beautiful flight characteristics of birds for years, and then they were inspired to build the world's first airplane. Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks Company, walked into an espresso cafe in Milan, Italy one day early in his career. He noticed that people were not just enjoying fantastic coffee, but they were using the cafe as a social meeting place. And Howard was so inspired by that idea, it helped him shape the mission statement of Starbucks, which still today is to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, one neighborhood at a time. I meet leaders all over the world whose passions are ignited by exposure to beautiful, potential-filled ideas, and it fills their passion bucket and they lead with passion. However, I meet equal numbers of leaders whose passions were kindled because they were outraged by something. A few years ago in my opening talk here at the summit, the title of the talk was Holy Discontent. I tried to prove from the Bible and from a cartoon character that enormous amounts of energy can be derived from encountering something that is so infuriating to you that you simply have to get off the couch and do something about it. Sometimes you just have to risk everything. It's that moment when the American cartoon character named Popeye cries out, "That's all I can stand. I can't stand no more." I have met leaders all over the world who get so frustrated by products that are poorly made, by services that are poorly rendered, by needy children that are being neglected or trafficked or abused, or by churches that are poorly led and poorly fed. And these people reach a kind of boiling point where they stand up and they declare, "I am going to spend every hour of every day of the rest of my life trying to fix this." And they do. And team members feel that pulsating passion emanating from their leader, and it kickstarts something inside their own heart, and before you know it, a whole team or even an entire organization is fired up and passion-filled. And in my experience, it's almost impossible to dam up that torrent, that whitewater rapids of pure, unbridled passion. It becomes an unstoppable force. So now comes the question that most of you Summit veterans knew was coming sooner or later. The question is, all right, if passion is so important, today, as you sit here, how filled is your passion bucket right now? How filled is your passion bucket? Is it way up to the top here so people feel the heat and the energy when they work around you? Is it that full? Or is it about half filled, take it or leave it? Or is it so low that your teammates have to poke you once in a while, see if you're still breathing, see if everything's okay? Now, here's what's interesting to me. No one on your team really cares whether your passion was derived from a beautiful dream or fueled by holy frustration. They don't give a rip. They just want to feel the heat and the energy coming from the heart of their leader. They want their own souls to be stirred by the passion of the leader. So I ask you a second time, how full is your passion bucket today? Which leads to the next question, which is obvious. Whose job is it to fill a leader's passion bucket? Whose job would that be? And don't waste a precious full day of your time reflecting on the answer to that question. You will all eventually come to the same conclusion I did after wasting about a year pondering and praying about it. It's the leader's job to fill his or her own passion bucket. It's not your board's job, your elder's job, your spouse's job, or your team's job to fire you up. It's your job to fire yourself up, and it's my job to fire myself up. Which leads to the final question about this passion thing. How does a leader keep her or his passion bucket filled? If it's our job, how do we do it? Now, this is where reflection time is warranted. Sorting out specifically what you must do consistently to stay filled up. We're all so different. What must you do? I've spent my whole adult life experimenting with how to keep my own passion bucket filled up. And without boring you with the details of my quest, the big picture has always involved reading passionate authors, passionate books, getting around passionate people whose effect on you is that it fills your passion bucket, and going to places that stir my soul. You going places that stir your soul. Speaking of places that stir souls, a few months ago I was feeling a little dip in my passion level. So I tacked a trip to Jordan on the back of a 2-week speaking tour in Europe for the Global Summit. And I had to dig pretty deep to add those days to the final leg of a trip that I'd been on for a long time. But something inside of me kept alerting me to the fact that my passion level had become dangerously low, and I had to do something about it. Remember, that's my job. You all know that the civil war in Syria has sent 12 million Syrian citizens running for their lives. Millions have escaped to surrounding countries for safety. I went to Jordan because we have a partner church in Amman that has taken on the challenge of providing food and care to Syrian refugees. Now, mind you, our partner church is thoroughly Christian. And the refugees they're serving are almost all Muslims. But they serve them with great passion and great love, no matter what. Anyway, I was with the pastor and his wife. We were visiting refugee families, listening to their stories, distributing groceries, expressing love to them. Near the end of this exhausting day, we visited with a mother with half a dozen children whose Syrian husband had told her and the kids to run for their lives because their home back in Syria was being bombed. Well, they did run for their lives. They wound up in Jordan, but they never really found out for sure what happened to the dad. He might be alive in Turkey, maybe he's not. So the mother is living in abject poverty in Amman, trying to support these kids with no husband, no job, no hope. And I'm listening to the story of this. And while I was listening, one of this mother's little kids entered the room, and he looked to me about the same age as my oldest grandson, Henry. So this kid walks timidly in the room, and when we made eye contact, I noticed just for a second that something seemed different with one of his eyes. It was sort of half closed. You might remember when someone has a droopy eye, okay? I just noticed this for a second. Just then his mother took him into her arms. She told us he was really struggling. Because against all odds, she had been able to enroll him in a Jordanian school, which he just loved and which meant some hope for him. But some bullies at the school, if you can believe this, they started beating him up after school because he was born with a droopy eye. So he came home one day after being beaten up again. He told his mom, "I'm never going back to that school, ever." I heard that story and something inside of me just broke. So his dad might be dead. His mother's overwhelmed and unemployed. His siblings are all malnourished, and they're living in a one-room dump. The breakthrough that could have changed this little boy's life, this Jordanian education opportunity, just became a non-option because of bullies beating up the kid for a droopy eye. I started to get physically sick with a feeling of hopelessness for this kid. And just then, God planted an idea in my mind. And again, those of you of the Christian faith, you know how God does this. I didn't hear any actual words from heaven. It was just an idea God planted in my mind. The idea was, ask the mother how old this kid is. And if he's 9, the exact age as your oldest grandson, this will be a sign, God sort of said to me, that I want you, Bill, I want you to get this kid's eye fixed. So, for some reason, that prompting kind of jolted me out of my hopelessness. And at the right time, I asked the mom through the translator, I said, "How old is this little guy?" She said, 9. And I said, that's cool. I have a grandson that same age. Eventually, we prayed with the mother and the kids, and then we went on our way. The next morning, as the pastor, our partner church pastor, was driving me back to the airport, I told him about the prompting from God that I had received about the 9-year-old with a droopy eye. And I said, I got to get that eye fixed. Wherever it needs to get fixed and whatever it takes. He turns around, looks at me, and he says, that could get very costly and it might be real complicated. And I said, it doesn't matter. We just have to do it. So he said he would do what he could. Roll the story ahead. Several months ago, we were able to have a surgery for this little guy. And it was traumatic. And here's what he looks like today. And I just learned from our partner church pastor yesterday, as a matter of fact, that he's doing great, and this church that we partner with is able to enroll him in a Jordanian school this fall. So he's going to get on his educational path back again. And I cannot tell you what just that little episode did for my faith and for my passion level. It lifted my spirits. I've drawn fuel and energy from that for months now. It's refilled my passion bucket in many ways. Now, I did not solve the refugee crisis. I'm very well aware of this. But sometimes helping out one kid just does wonders for a human soul. So I don't know what specifically will fill your passion bucket. That's not my job. But you must do whatever you must do to get your passion bucket filled. And never forget, everybody around you wins when you lead with enthusiasm and energy. When the pulse rate of a whole organization speeds up because it's feeding off the passion of its leader, man, it's really cool. Find your passion. Feed your passion. Keep your passion bucket filled, and everyone wins. Okay, now let's go to the second set of lenses. And what you notice about these lenses, if you look at them carefully, is that the frames are cool, but the lenses are shattered. And you'd have pretty hard time seeing through those things if you put them on. This set of glasses right here carries a lot of emotion for me. I didn't realize that at the time. When I started Willow over 40 years ago, my people lenses of leadership were shattered. By that I mean that up to that point in my life, I had never experienced working in a high-functioning, people-honoring culture. My dad's core business was a wholesale produce business. That's a very tough business. That business employed a lot of entry-level dock workers, truck drivers, self-taught mechanics. Many of his warehouse workers were drifters, ex-cons, addicts, and they worked hard during the day and they partied very hard at night. And a fair number of them stole regularly from our company. My dad's way of protecting our family company was to talk softly and carry a big stick. We never had a human resource department. I distinctly remember that he would hire willing workers right off the street. They'd come in and ask for a job. No resume, no referrals, no nothing. He'd hire them right there. And I remember how he would fire misbehaving workers right on the spot as well. Our culture was what I would call spontaneous, primitive, and low frill. We didn't have, teamwork posters on the walls. We didn't have ping pong tables in the lunchroom. You can bet there were no suggestion boxes around, and no one would have read any suggestions anyone made anyway. By hindsight, it was a performance-oriented, fear-based culture. And it's the only real culture, work culture, that I experienced in the first 20 years of my life. One of my lingering memories of our company's culture is my dad walking briskly out of his corner office into the warehouse area with proof in his hands that yet another hourly worker had stolen from the company. My dad never raised his voice. Wasn't his style. He would walk out in the warehouse and he'd say, "Where's Eddie?" Everyone knew something horrible was about ready to happen to Eddie. But Eddie would step forward and my dad would say, "Eddie, meet me in the banana room."